I told somebody one time, I can tell you my entire story in 30 seconds. If I take the story out of the story, I can tell you my life in 30 seconds. I was born into this world. I had some issues. I grew up in a broken home. Dad molested me. I was uncertain, did a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, met a woman, had a kid, started a family. I work with my 2 childhood best friends. I attend life every single day with passion and purpose. And that's my story. Everything else is stuff that I keep telling myself. And I'm sober. And because of doing the things that I've done, they've got me to where I'm at today.
That was Tony Grebmeier. And this is the Share Podcast.
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Share Podcast. And today we have Tony Grebmeier, otherwise known as Tony G, joining us on the show. And Tony built a multi-million-dollar business with his childhood friends in 2001 called Ship Offers. In 2015, he launched the podcast Entrepreneur Unplugged, now titled The Tony G Show, where he brings together his love for business, radio, and life on the show. Tony's mission in life is to build a community where struggling entrepreneurs know they can achieve anything they want despite their past. That's who Tony is today. But in 2008, Tony hit rock bottom from drug addiction and alcoholism, almost losing his family, almost taking his life, battling demons from his childhood that kept him trapped in self-centered fear until he ultimately found recovery. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Tony is an amazing man. I've gotten an opportunity to spend time with him after the podcast, ask him for some help and guidance, and I'm honored to say that today, Tony is a friend. Tony's all about service. He's all about giving back. He truly cares. I'm scheduled to be on the Tony G Show in about a month or so as soon as that episode comes out, I'll be sure to share with all of you guys on the Share Podcast private group. So let's dive into Tony's story, but first, a quick message from our sponsor, Organifi. Let's face it, guys, we all need green juice in our lives. But who has time for juicing? First of all, I have to go and purchase all these leafy green vegetables and roots, clean them, wash them, and then juice them. And then after I'm done with the juicer, I have to clean the juicer. What a nightmare. The beautiful thing is Organifi has worked all that out for you in one easy-to-make drink that only requires 1 scoop of green juice and water. No blending, no juicing, no cleanup. And more importantly, this is no ordinary green juice. It's organic and upgraded with 11 superfoods like wheatgrass, ashwagandha, and turmeric. My wife and I love it. We drink it every single day. And the way we like to prepare it is we take fresh pineapples, cold water, ice, and the Organifi, blend it. That's it. And it's absolutely delicious. Seriously, guys, whether you're drinking Organifi or not, you need to have some sort of a green drink in your life because it's the easiest way to get all the nutrients you get from plants in one convenient dose. Give it a try, folks, and get 20% off your order. Go to www.organifi.com. You can also find it in the show notes. You can find it in the iTunes show notes. But if you go to the website, it's organifi.com. Use promo code SHARE, SHAIR, and receive 20% off of your order. So go to Organifi.com and get your green juice today. Next on the agenda is iTunes. For those of you that own an iPhone, have you subscribed to the Share Podcast? I know that thousands of you listen to it on iTunes, but have you clicked on the subscribe button? Here's what I found out. The best way to rank in iTunes is for people to subscribe to the show. So I have a goal, people. I want the Share Podcast to be the #1 recovery podcast in iTunes. And so for that to happen and for us to rank better, when you listen to the Share Podcast on iTunes, be sure to click the subscribe button. That way, every Tuesday, it automatically downloads onto your phone, and we rank higher and higher in iTunes, making it easier and easier for addicts in recovery to find the show. So again, I love getting the 5-star ratings and reviews. Thank you so much for those. I love reading them on the air. Please keep those coming. But if you haven't subscribed to the Share Podcast, please do so. It's the best way to support the show. And speaking of iTunes reviews, wow, do we have a treat today. We received an amazing review last week, and I didn't read it on last week's episode because the episode was like 2 hours. So I wanted to save it for this week. And this review is from Belgium, from Marjolaine. And she writes, awesome podcast. I'm pretty lazy, but here I am after an hour of downloading, registering, snatching a relative's visa to install iTunes just so I can write a review to support this podcast. Oh my God, I love this amazing woman. I'm a regular listener via Podbean, and the Share podcast is my companion on my morning walk to work and evening walk back. The host, Omar, has a Morgan Freeman-like soothing voice and the most addictive laugh in the world. Oh man, my ego's going bananas right now. I love it. And there was something I didn't know before listening, that recovery can be fun and our fucked up past could be looked at as a funny learning school. Instead of living in constant shame and guilt or feeling like an outcast, I feel like I'm in a fun group. And having fun was one of my drives for being a user of multiple substances. I'm not able to go to meetings. I'm working on my future by studying and trying to raise a non-dysfunctional family. And I really don't know a single person except my toddler who doesn't drink alcohol in this alcohol-driven society. So I'm happy to learn that yes, they are out there, and that yes, some other people also did some pretty fucked up stuff, but survived to live and tell the often funny tale with a happy ending. What more does a person want? Keep it up, O, and thanks for the effort, and to the guests. Thanks for sharing. Wow, that was amazing. I read that last week. I almost posted it. And these reviews, they blow my mind. What we're doing, what the Share podcast is doing, what the Facebook private group is doing is nothing short of amazing. And Marjolaine is one of the members in the Share Facebook private group. And she's in there doing a ton of support, helping others, being of service. It's what you do when you can't get to meetings. And I know for me, it is an honor and a privilege to be of service. HP, baby. And I love the Morgan Freeman comment. You know, I've been compared, my podcast has been compared to the Rich Roll Show, and my voice has now been compared to Morgan Freeman. I'm actually starting to believe my own shit. Anyway, I've got one more review I want to read. I'm going to leave another super long one for next week. But there was another one from Burgette75. Thank you. Love listening to these on my daily jogs. Love hearing others' authenticity when sharing their hopes with drunks like me. This is what it's all about, folks. This is why I do what I do, and I realize more than ever what God's purpose is for me, and it's to do this podcast. I'm going to be launching some mini episodes here weekly very soon. I'm going to be embarking on life coaching and recovery life coaching. I know what my purpose is. It's to help people, to inspire people, to motivate people, and to show that recovery is awesome and it's fun and you can have any life that you want beyond your wildest dreams. You just have to give up drugs and alcohol, and the rest gets delivered to you on a silver platter. And if you haven't joined the Facebook private group, then do yourself a favor. There are about 7,000 of you that listen to me every week, and there's only 2,500 people in the Share private group. It's private. Nobody else can see it. And if you're not able to make meetings, that's the best way to connect with other recovering addicts. You can also do service in there. There's people in there that are relapsing. There's people that are coming back from relapses. There are people that are struggling in their relationships. And there's people in there with a lot of clean time that are doing a lot of service supporting these people. You can too. Jump in there, do some service, join us, go to Facebook, go to the search bar, type in Share, SHAIR, private group, and the Share Addiction Recovery private group will pop right up. Get in there. We'd love to meet you. And another great way to support the Share podcast is with your donations. The Share podcast is doing a tremendous amount of service. It's helping thousands of people, and it could use your support. It's like putting $1 in the basket for every meeting. There are those of you that continue to support the Share podcast every month with your donations. Many of our supporters do an automatic payment every month of $5, which translates to $1.25 an episode. There are 7,000 people that listen to the Share podcast every week. So if only 1% of our entire listener base would send in a $5 donation per month, it will ensure that not only the Share podcast always has a future, but it will allow us to take it to another level and help even more people. It's time to get into action and start donating $5 a month to the Share Podcast today. And for those of you who are planning a trip to Costa Rica and also would like to make sure that you're close to meetings, then all you have to do is email me, o@thesharepodcast.com, and we will set up a time to do a conference call for your next trip to Costa Rica. So for those of you who are planning to come to Costa Rica and want to be close to meetings and also want to be close to the beaches and the rainforest, then email me at o@thesharepodcast.com and we'll put a package together for you. So now a quick message from Transitions Daily and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Hey, Tony, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Omar. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I'm excited to have you on the show, buddy. How you feeling?
I am well. I'm feeling great. It's been an awesome day and excited to be here with you.
All right, so let's do this. So, folks, today we have Tony Grebmeier joining us on the Share Podcast. And Tony is an entrepreneur and the host of his own podcast, The Tony G Show. Tony launched The Tony G Show as a way to help others, and that no matter how complicated your business obstacles are, you can bounce back. Thriving in life isn't about how much money you have or crossing off arbitrary goals on a bucket list. It is a focus on how we can help others and what we have to learn from those who have overcome challenges in their businesses as well. Did I get that about right, Tony?
It sounds like recovery to me. Yep.
All right, man, let's do this. So first of all, Tony, tell us a little bit about what your normal daily routine looks like, including recovery.
I love it. I think it's a great question. I get up pretty early in the morning. By 6:15, I'm usually dressed. I work to attend about 3 to 4 meetings a week. I'm into action pretty much right out of the morning gate. Get dressed, take a shower, whatnot, a little prayer, a little meditation. Try to get into gratitude right away in the morning. Usually I have a formula called Living a Fulfilled Day, and I get to do my day in reflection. So I look at what I did yesterday, then I get into 3 things that I'm grateful for today, 3 things that are non-negotiable that I really need to work on. 1 habit, good or bad, that I'm completely aware of. So maybe today I'm aware of, yesterday I wasn't doing too well in the food category. I need to be mindful of the food selection I choose today, whatever that looks like. And then 1 person to reach out to today who's made an impact in my life somewhere. Maybe it's an old school teacher or a friend, and just send them a little love, send them a text or make a phone call or write them a letter. However I can do that. That's something about my day every single day. Get to the office, work a pretty full schedule. I'm in year 16 with 2 of my childhood best friends, and we'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, coming up. And what I do really is kind of just be a soundboard for people to give them hope, to get them through their day, whatever struggles they're facing because customers are yelling at them or they're having a bad day from a relationship that they brought to work today, whatever that looks like. I try to bring hope into all things that I do. So I get here and I guess I'm your cheerleader. And then I spend my day looking forward to going home and being present with my family. That's key for me because that's not how it always used to be. Getting home, seeing my wife. We're coming up on 19 years of marriage in July.
Wow.
We have a son who just graduated high school. So we just got that done. And now I have a kid who just turned 16. So my kids are on the later part of their teens. And my business partner's kids are all on the early side of, like 8 and 9 years old. So I get to go home and experience adult conversations 24/7. So I love it.
That is awesome. So how do you incorporate that? How do you incorporate recovery into your schedule?
So 100% of my day is being of service to others. And so I'm constantly making phone calls, receiving text messages or calls. I have one main sponsor, but I have the people who have been with me since the very beginning, a gentleman out in California, first sponsor, Chris. So I usually check in with Chris sometime in my morning on my drive just to see how he's doing, what's going on. When I moved to Colorado, a little over 7 years ago, I ended up getting a new sponsor and been working with him. And then I have a good friend of mine who helped me through some transition period. I hate saying I outgrow a sponsor, but I think we reach a certain level where we need some additional help.
Yes.
And so what I like to say is that I've got a wealth of people in recovery from 19 years, 29 years, and 41 years, giving me kind of insight and input to help me to live a fulfilled life, but also to be present in all things that I do. And they teach me the basics over and over and over. So they're teaching me duplication, which makes my life work.
Well, one of the things I like most is the present part, being present. That was a big challenge for me for so many years because, trying to climb the ladder, always trying to get ahead, reaching for that almighty dollar because it was always about the money. And, I'll spend time with my family later. So work more hours at the office, work into the weekends, get home, be exhausted, barely say, anything before it's like, hey, let's watch something. So I don't have to use up any more energy and save as much as I can for the office until I hit the proverbial wall and, had to say enough was enough. And now I do exactly what you're talking about. I think it's so important to be present and to be a part of your family's life. What you're talking about here is your kids growing up and you're getting to be a part of all of that. And listeners, if you're missing any of this because you think that making money is the most important part, I'm here to tell you I'm one of those people that now believes that money will not buy you happiness.
No, I mean, part of my story, right? Prior to getting sober, I still remember my oldest. He was 6 years old, and I left for like the third time from the house. And I remember my wife at the time, she goes, you need to say to your son that you're leaving again. So I go in, I say, hey, Dad's moving out. And he literally turned to me and he says, Dad, you used to be the strongest man I know, and now you're the weakest. I've never forgot that, even after the years of recovery. And I asked him not too long ago, do you remember saying that? He goes, no. I'm like, that was a God shot. Thank you. Because I needed to hear that. God spoke through him in that moment and told me something that has impacted my life ever since that statement was said. And I remember it on a daily basis.
I read that on your website and it had such an impact on me. I could feel the chills because I could be there in that room in that moment and knowing the utter desperation that you have to feel. And there's so many of us that have had to face that same thing. And you, fortunately, were able to springboard from that. You were able to use that as your moment of taking action, which is amazing because I know friends who their kids into their teens didn't know where their dad was. And it's just heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so my father was an alcoholic, an untreated alcoholic. My great-grandfather was an alcoholic. My great-great-grandfather was an alcoholic. It skipped one generation. So my whole lineage that I remember was a bunch of alcoholics. But I didn't know what alcoholism was. That was what probably was the most fascinating thing about growing up. I just thought it was normal that people had a drink, got slippers from the wife. They sat in the recliner and then the wife went into the kitchen to make dinner. Like I thought that was totally normal growing up in the 70s because I saw it. Not only did I see it on Leave It to Beaver, I saw it in houses of people that I'd go and visit. I'm like, that's completely normal. That's what's so interesting about the disease. You think it's normal. Right? Because I can't differentiate between the truth and the false. And so all I saw was an example. So I duplicated that.
Yes, absolutely. And that I was raised in the same categories, dad, uncles. Every time we got together, it was drinking to excess, drinking to pass out. And I'm like, well, as soon as I grow up, that's what I'm going to be doing. And, you just carry it along and mine just progressed a lot worse than theirs did.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, and nobody talked about alcoholism.
No. It wasn't alcoholism. Never. It was never. No one ever labeled themselves. My dad had a friend that died of alcoholism. And until he died, they said, well, he was an alcoholic. But up until then, no one would utter that word because that would mean looking at themselves. And there was no way back in that generation that people were airing their dirty laundry to anybody.
Oh, yeah. I'm an open book today, but it wasn't always like that, right? I say this because this is a very clarifying statement for me, and it's very helpful for when I say it. I spent a lifetime trying to look good to avoid looking bad. Man, and that takes a lot of work.
Yeah. You can't save your ass and your face at the same time.
But boy, did I try.
Yeah. We all do. We all do. All right. So, Tony, tell us how much clean time you have and when is your anniversary date?
I am coming up on 9 years. It'll be December 15th and 2017. So I walked in the rooms on the first day on a Monday, sat down in a chair and heard a story. And I said, that sounds like me. So I'm like, that sounds like me. And I'd never been in the rooms. I'd never heard about the rooms.
Wow.
I'd never, ever heard anything about a big book or 12 by 12 or any. I didn't hear anything about it.
Wow.
I walked in, I heard my story, and I've been there ever since.
That is another miracle. Another miracle. All right. So tell us, Tony, how old you were, real quickly, how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs? And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Good question. So I got to tell a side note. This is like the first time that I knew that I was wasted. My family told me I was 2 years old. It was Thanksgiving. And somehow my mom and my aunt went down to work on the turkey, and they came back up and I was passed out. I drank 2 of the highball drinks and I was literally passed out. So I guess I've had a problem with alcohol pretty much all my life. But sometime around 10 or 11, I'm not certain of the date. And once again, see, I watched, because I lived with my father, I saw my dad smoke cigarettes and get them out of a cabinet. I smoked cigarettes. Then I saw him, he used to drink scotch, on the rocks. So I tried it. Oh God, it was horrible. And, what it did for me, I felt different. I had a lot of demons growing up in my life that I dealt with, overcame some adversity and some things that had happened to me. At 13, my dad had molested me. I blinded somebody by accident in 6th grade over a summer, and I felt a lot of shame. I was always a troublesome kid. Not that I didn't have loving parents. I was always trying to get away from the normalcy, and I wanted to do something that made me feel good. I've always been chasing something. And so when I finally got a chance to drink and then turn into drugs, man, I felt alive for the first time. I felt different than everybody else on the street, right? I kind of felt like Superman puffing out my chest. I'm like, look at me, look at me, look at me. And inside, man, it's that burying all those feelings. I never talked to them about anybody. And that was what was hard for me.
Yes. Okay. Wow. Okay. I can't wait to dive into your story, which is exactly what we're going to do right now because you're all warmed up, buddy. So it's time for me to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Tony, please take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, recovery was something I never even dreamed of because all I wanted to do was die. So early on in my childhood, growing up in a single family home, my parents divorced when I was 3 months old. My father grew up and told my mom, or later admitted to my mom, that he was gay. And so that wasn't something that wasn't talked about in the 70s. And what I found early on was what I told you earlier, was trying to hide, change the way I felt, like looking one way to avoid looking bad, right? So I got really good into lying in my young, probably 7 to 13. I was a really good liar. At least I thought I was until I got caught, which was almost every time. But I always manipulated and changed situations to work for me. And I spent a lot of my time and energy. It was exhausting trying to manipulate everything to go according to my plan. In my 13, 14 years, I was borrowing my mom's car without her knowing, driving it around the neighborhood. I was going into stores and I would steal. It didn't matter if it was a pack of gum. It was something. It was a chase. It was, I was wanting, there was a feeling you got when you did something wrong. Because, I was the kid. If you said, don't do it, actually I heard, you should do it. You should do it. And it was my invitation to prove you wrong that no. What you're really saying is, I've never seen anybody do it. You should try it. And so quickly, being in my teens, I wanted friends. And so you kind of buy your friends. You hang out with them, you get alcohol, you get drugs, whatever it may be. And, my drug of choice, unfortunately, back then was cigarettes. Like I really like cigarettes, love tobacco. I played around with marijuana, but I'd always found myself like passing out. It was never anything that I really, really enjoyed. And then alcohol, though, was easy because my dad always had it out in decanters and was sitting right out. You could literally come in and pour yourself a drink. And so from time to time, that would be my deal. And then I remember I passed for a couple of years. I didn't think much about it. And until my sophomore, junior year, alcohol became something I drank every single day. I was hanging out around the wrong crowd and the friends, and we were going to my house, going to their house, going and buying liquor. You know, I had a fake ID in high school too. It was a Colorado license. This is a true story. It's a total true story. You couldn't make this up if you had to. So I remember Market Street, San Francisco. A couple of my buddies, we go up there and we, $10, $15, you get an ID. And I live in Colorado now, so this is really ironic. And it was the only ID that looked real. All the other ones were like novelty IDs. And so I bought one and they said, what name would you like to put? So I just put Alcoholic. I just put Alcoholic, and that was my ID. And I bought alcohol, and Mr. Wong didn't look at it and say anything. He's like, yeah, here you go. Here's your alcohol, and you take off. And so my ID was Alcoholic. And so I always kind of found it like, once again, right? Everything kind of happens and there's a plan behind it. And I was never up to the plan. I was always kind of running behind, and I knew God had a plan. And so it prepared me kind of for some things in my life, because I became aware of this chase that I was mentioning earlier. That's what I was after. So now I fast forward after high school. Literally the day I graduated, I'm off to college, and I'm in college, living in Modesto, California, attending Modesto Junior College, playing water polo. And I got really into LSD and mushrooms. And, I think I've done LSD 50 times, something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And I just kind of like tripping out. I loved, on a weekend getting into like, hey, let's do some caps this weekend. Let's do some liquid. Let's dose. Let's have some fun. And all I would do was sit. It was never like I was causing anybody any harm or problems. I would sit, listen to Led Zeppelin. That was my favorite band and still is. And I would write. And little Shroomer Man would come out and sit on my shoulder, and we'd have conversations all night. And then that was like my outlet for like kind of what I had dealt with all my life. My dad molested me for my graduation present in junior high and never told or shared that with anybody. And kind of those feelings of like, am I gay? Did something happen? Like, what's going wrong? And all these things kind of snowballed in the back of my mind. Like, I was different. I was different than my friends. And what I realized is I was just suppressing everything and not talking. And I used to be in radio, so it was so weird for me to not share it with people. But once again, I didn't want you to think that there was something wrong with me. And, I started in radio at age, 11, 12, and 13. I got my FCC license when I was 13, forgot about it, went off to college. In college, I started doing some radio broadcasting at the college. And what I realized was it was an outlet for hiding out again. It was just another outlet for me to tell fabulous stories, because, you take the audience on a journey, and the whole time you just want to help them to go on a journey. If it's an artist or if it's a concert or something, you want to share with them something so they can put themselves in that moment. And that's what I got really good at, was telling people stories. And, I remember going to college and then transferring to Redding, California, and I had a job at a radio station up near my grandparents. And I was in Redding, California, and I was just smoking cigarettes and, smoke a little J here and there, and everything was fine. But I started drinking more because, I'm now 21, 22. It's easy. I can buy it without showing you my alcoholic ID. And I didn't really have a problem. It was manageable. Everything seemed to be fine. And, then I transferred from Redding, California to San Jose. I think I was 23, 24. And for my 25th birthday, I was with this gal, and I'm married to her today. And for my birthday, I was at the bar that I used to broadcast live at, and they lined up 25 shots of all random things you could imagine. Goldschlager, Purple Hooters, whiskey, Jack Daniels, you name it, tequila, straight. It didn't matter what it was. And I drank all 25. Just pounded them all. Right? Pounded them all like it was nobody's business, because that was, once again, I wanted you to think, wow, look at this guy go. And I get out to the parking lot, I guess, a bit later, and my girlfriend at the time's patting me on the back, and I'm just heaving, and I'm sicker than a dog. She finally gets me in my big truck, and she's driving home, and she gets pulled over by the cops. And luckily, she wasn't drinking. And she said, it's this guy's birthday. And I need to get him home. And the officer said, go ahead. No, those days don't happen anymore. They'll give you, they'll harass you a little bit, but they got me home. And, I shook it off like nobody's business. And next day I'm in Vegas with all my bros, and we're having a good time. And my girlfriend came along, and it was supposed to be a guy's trip. But once again, I manipulate the situation to go according to my plan. And they were pissed, man. Two of them were my business partners. They were just mad. They're like, what the heck are you doing? Like, this was supposed to be a guy's weekend and you bring a girl. And, I could party, have fun, wake up and go about my business and everything would be fine. And, little longer after that, we got married. My wife and I got married, and all my other friends were like, you're getting married? You're 26 years old. What the heck are you doing? Well, my wife and I had a baby on the way. And so everything was, pretty good.
Right.
I dealt with some issues kind of around that for me personally. I dealt with, was I ready to be a father? My dad left at such an early age in my life. Was I ready to be a father? And, once that heartbeat is beating and you can hear it, in the ultrasounds, and you kind of get that, you get excited. And then once the baby's born and you're holding it and grabs your finger and you're like, okay, there's some synergy, like you're excited. Like I am absolutely so proud of my kid. And through it all, man, I just still had all this stuff going on inside. I didn't feel real. I didn't feel alive. I felt like a fraud in a lot of ways. This carried on for 5 or 6 years. And then I ended up having multiple knee surgeries due to some basketball injuries. And, next thing I know, I'm now addicted to pain pills. And, let's say, 2017? So 2005, 2006, they poured that stuff out like it was, candy.
Pill mills. Yeah.
And so I could get 60, 80, pills on a good week into my body. I could manipulate the pharmacist on a Friday because I knew the doctor was gone by like 4, and I became friends with the pharmacist who was just below the doctor. And I'd say, I'm in a lot of pain. Surgery didn't go well. Okay, well, the doctor's office is closed. I'm like, is there anything you could do? And next thing I know, I've got a script. I'm in my car racing out there to grab it, going and filling it, and I'd have a great weekend. And that's been the theory or the kind of the theme of my life, is always figuring out a way. Yes. It doesn't matter what it is, finding a way. And 2007, I had at the time up to 4 knee surgeries now, really addicted to pills. I'm on testosterone. I'm on HGH. I'm taking Xanax. I'm taking Lunesta. I'm taking anything and everything you possibly can. It didn't matter what it was. I was trying to, once again, change the way I feel. And, my life is pretty crappy. I'm drinking all the time. Alcohol was like water to me. It didn't really do anything to me. That's what I thought, but I was causing all sorts of problems, marital issues, moved out of the house 3 different times. And, fast forward just a year later into 2008, I went on a little trip to Mexico. I came home and get out of the car from my trip after my wife had picked me up, and I was with my kids, and I wanted to go to the pumpkin patch for some reason and see them, but I was really just messed up in life. And after kind of going to the pumpkin patch, my wife said, hey, do you mind if I talk to you? And I said, no, let's get out of the car. And we were separated at the time, and I'm sitting outside of the apartment complex, and she says to me, I just got to tell you this, Tony. She says, I don't love you anymore.
Ooh.
I have to tell you that because I need my life back. And I said, okay, yeah, okay. And I went about my business, went into the gate, went upstairs, and I'm sitting for the very first time in my life. I felt hopeless. I felt like that was rejection to the utmost. I had never been told that I can remember, maybe when I was a kid, somebody telling me they didn't love me anymore. And I sat on the couch and I said, screw it. That's it. I'm done. I'm over. So there's nothing else to live for. Marriage is falling apart. Business is fine. I'm hiding. I'm living in my apartment. Yeah, screw it. So I literally get out every drug that I could find in my house and I put it on the table. And I said, before I take them, I want to write a little note. And so technology had advanced. And so I got out the notes on the phone and I started writing, and I started writing my suicide note. And I literally said, blah, 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 blah. This is what was going on. And in the midst of that, I got a phone call from a buddy, and he says, "Hey, I want to come and see you." And I'm like, "All right, sure, that'd be great." I remember saying, "Damn, I just want to die. Can I just finish?" But all right. So I put everything away and I go back to my phone, and that note's gone. That note's gone. Didn't exist. It was like nothing ever happened. And a couple seconds later, I get a knock on the door. My buddy John arrives. He comes in and he gives me a big hug. And he says, "Tony, your life has meaning and purpose, but what you're doing right now doesn't." And that was kind of like another God shot for me prior to sobriety. I heard that and I said, "All right, cool. Come on, sit down." I'm like, "You already ruined my day anyways." So he comes in and he sits and he begins to kind of just share with me some of the observations and kind of his walk, his journey. It wasn't necessarily sober, but just he spoke to me and I got it. And I there was a glimmer of hope. There was something there. And that was 10/9 of 2008. Now, obviously my sobriety date is 12/15 of 08, but it took me right there in that moment to open my mind to maybe I could turn this thing around. Maybe I could change some direction that I've been going if I could just make some adjustments. It took me a couple of weeks and I ended up going to a weekend seminar. It's an education program, and I signed an affidavit on 10/23 of 08 not to do drugs or alcohol during the weekend. And I literally signed my name, and I had drugs in my pocket attending a workshop for myself, and threw them all down. The toilet flushed it and went back to the seminar, and I did the whole seminar weekend and come back a couple of weeks later for like some weekly seminars. And somebody said, "How are you doing with your drinking and your drug?" And I said, "No, I haven't had anything." And they go, "Why not?" I'm like, "Because I signed a piece of paper." And they're like, "Yo, that was for that weekend."
Oh, no.
That was for that weekend. And so I said, "Oh, really?" And they said, "Yeah." So the next week, what did I do? I showed up drunk.
Of course.
Right? You gave me permission. Right? I came back the next week. I was twice as hammered. I came back the third week. They asked me to leave. I haven't done drugs since that date. I gave up cocaine, all the other stuff. I gave it all up. But the alcohol, though, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. Right? And I had a homework project, and I called my mom on 12/14. And I talked to my mom for a few minutes. Anybody who ever has a relationship with your mom, you definitely say, "Everything's great, Mom. Things are fine. Do you need money?" No, I'm great. Like, you just literally want to get off the phone, or you just want her to know that you're okay. And so I quickly began going into my normal spiel. I got it all figured out. Yeah, I hit a couple bumps in the road. Life isn't working great, but I got a couple plans to redeem myself. And my mom began to 12-step me. And 44 minutes later into that conversation, I said, "You know what, Mom, you're right. I do need help. I can't do this anymore." And she had suggested, because she had dealt with my dad and gone to Al-Anon, she said, "You know what, maybe you should turn to the rooms. Maybe the rooms could help you. You'll find some community. You'll find men who can help you. You'll find a family that will be there with you." And I'm like, yeah. Once again, just trying to get Mom off the phone. I said, "You know what, Mom, I will do that. I will make a phone call. I do have a friend." And I hung up the phone, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what did I just admit? I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I got issues. Okay, cool." Something happened in that moment. Like something changed in me. And I quickly went home, opened up the web search, said, "Am I an alcoholic?" And up came a test. And I remember I don't know how many questions it was, maybe 20. And I remember taking the test, and I'm like, I passed. Oh, wait, I actually failed. I am an alcoholic. I am an addict. And I then picked up the phone and called the only person that I knew that had anything around treatment or a program. And I said, "Hey, would you mind taking me to a meeting? I found one tomorrow. It's down the road at Stepping Stones." And he goes, "No, absolutely not. What time do you want me to pick you up?" And 5:00, I'm sitting in a Monday meeting. And it was a big book study. And I remembered the person, Tom, leading the course. I sat next to the window scared. He sat next to me and got me a cup of coffee. And I listened and I heard my story. And I said, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm at home. I think I shared and took a welcome chip. I still have that welcome chip today. And I remember right after the meeting, a gentleman walked up to me, and his name was Dale. And he says, "If you would take this book and you would read the first 164 pages, it may just change your life." And I said, "Okay, thanks." Took the book, didn't know what the hell he gave me. Some manuscript, something or another. And my buddy Chris gives me a ride back to my wife's house at the time. She was out, and I sat down on, the sofa, and I said, would you do me a huge favor and not tell anybody, especially my wife? I just needed some time to figure some things out. And as he got up and get ready to leave, he says, Tony, would you do something for me? I go, yeah, sure. He goes, would you promise to check in with me at least once a day? Text, phone call, maybe meet me, whatever we need to do. I said, sure. I didn't know what he was doing. I just said, sure. And I think the first 2 weeks went by, and I checked in every single day. And I think one day I messed up. I didn't call him. Oh, man, I thought, oh, gosh, I just let the world down because I let myself down. And what I realized was I was beginning to understand change for the first time in my life, some accountability, some integrity, some openness, some honesty coming from my heart. I know, like, it sounds weird in a short period of 2 weeks, but changes started taking place. And I just got into rigorous action. I just worked really, really hard. I missed one more day in like the 90. He never made me do 90 and 90. He always would say, like, you got to find a program that works for you. You got to find a meeting that works for you. There's a lot of opportunities out there. You got to find something that works, but you got to do it on a daily basis. Step one's the most important for me. He says, you can't mess that up. If you mess the others, that's fine. But number one, you can't drink, you can't use, no matter what. Yes. I said, okay. And we started doing the work and launched into some rigorous action and honesty. Oh, you want to talk about being scared, sharing yourself to another human being, admitting your faults and all that. That was interesting. But it took me 18 months until I could actually get into my 4-step. I sat, on my hands going, yeah, I feel really comfortable on the 3rd step. I think I need some more help. And I just would read and go to meetings. I would lead meetings. I had a year of sobriety, so a lot of meetings you could go to. You could lead if there was a topic, you could lead that. And so I was always trying to look good, right? I still was looking good in sobriety. Look at me, look at me, look at me. I got it. Sobriety, right? So I really realized these patterns that I had created over my life. And I explain alcoholism to people just like this, right? So for me, it's pretty simple. We're all allotted so many drugs and so much alcohol in our life, like a big giant pile. Imagine that in front of you. My problem was I just went through all of mine, then I was on to yours. And what I realized is that I was stealing not alcohol or drugs. I was stealing time from my sponsor. I was stealing his heart and his effort. Yeah, he was staying sober, and yeah, I was staying sober, but I wasn't giving him everything that I had, because I was afraid of being found out that I wasn't good enough. And that goes all the way back. These are my character defects. This is my ego, right? Edging God out. These are the things that I struggled with all of my life, of being found out that I'm not who I thought I was. And instead, I'm somebody who just is going to have some ups and downs, and that's life. And once I moved to Colorado on July 3rd of 2010, I quickly got into the rooms and met a gentleman. They called him Banana Jim. And he quickly took me through the steps. Just, let's go. I told him what I was hung up on, quickly got me to the 4-step, got to do the 4-step, went out by the lake and did my 5th step. We're into my 6 and 7. We're working on 8 and 9. I'm into 10, into 11. And then I thought, here comes 12. What's after 12? Graduation. I'm moving on up, and I'm thinking, man, if I can get through 12, I'm good. And that's where the real work has begun for me, is the whole giving back and sponsoring and being of service. And that has literally changed who I am as a human being. Coming up on 19 years with my wife, watch my son graduate, see my youngest turn 16. My mom said it, and I'll keep saying it to any alcoholic that I meet. You can't even imagine what your life will look like. Give it some time. Go easy on yourself. Love yourself. It's okay. We're not perfect. We're working together. It's progress, not perfection. And my mom said to me when I got sober, she wrote me a letter. She says, son, you won't even imagine what your life will look like in 10 years. I can't even begin to tell you what my life looks like in 8. It's amazing, the transformation that I've been able to see. It's not monetary, but it's momentum that has taken place in my life. And we've repaired some of the deepest, darkest things that people should run for the hills over. My wife and I owe her a debt of gratitude for sticking with me. So I always say on cards when we sign them, I said, thanks for choosing us. That to me is repair. That is a victory over my past. My past was to run for the hills. Today it's run to embrace my wife and to talk to her and tell her I'm flawed and I make mistakes and that I need help today. And I coach and teach people to ask today for what they need and to be honest with others.
Right.
That is not something that I'm good at. And I have to work on that still every single day, even though, my sponsor says, Tony, what's your first response? To say no. What's your second response? To say yes. Okay. So why are you like that? I said, well, because, for 36 years of my life, I was dysfunctionally messed up and I've got 8 years of sobriety now and I think and do things differently. He goes, okay, what do you think still dominates you? 36 years of old thinking. And I said, okay, cool. So I'm good with that. And I acknowledge that, but I try not to let that be my excuse. So I'm aware of it. That's the mindfulness that I have today in sobriety. I didn't have that before. And so every single day I make at least 3 calls. Doesn't matter if I'm traveling the world, I'll text message, I'll phone call, I'll do something. I'm into action talking to somebody in sobriety every single day over the last 8 years. It's the only way my life works. You got to have a bunch of people, especially guys in your corner, to call you out on your crap. They're not there to make you feel good. They're there to help you change your life and to change things going on in your life. And for much my adult life was I was a scared little kid and didn't know how to admit that I had some stuff in my closet that needed, recycling and needed to be cleaned out. And once I got that done, I realized, man, I have a lot of lies and things that I've been hiding. Now I need freedom. How do I get freedom? Do the work. How do you do the work? You get into action. How do you get into action? Call your sponsor, go to a meeting, read the big book, help another human being today, stick your hand out and just be of service. That's a little bit of my recovery story, right? So what do I have on the other side of that? I have a life today that I never dreamed was possible. I can't even imagine how dark my life was to get to the point to want to take this life. Like, I can't even imagine not being able to watch my kids grow up and to be married to just a sincerely beautiful person inside and out who does not and did not have to stick with me. But through the grace of God and recovery, we've been able to repair our marriage and work at it every single day. And we travel the world together and are best friends. And she's the love of my life. And I owe her tons of respect. That it's not that I didn't have it for her. I just didn't know how to love people. I just didn't know how to love people through honesty and being open and sharing, like, I'm messed up and I made a mistake today. And so I stopped running and hiding and trying to be perfect. And I am who I am today. So my life works.
And that's your story.
It's my story, man. I'm happy. Because you know what's crazy? I told somebody one time, I can tell you my entire story in 30 seconds. If I take the story out of the story, I can tell you my life in 30 seconds. I was born into this world. I had some issues. I grew up in a broken home. Dad molested me. I was uncertain, did a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, met a woman, had a kid, started a family. I work with my 2 childhood best friends. I attend life every single day with passion and purpose. And that's my story. Everything else is stuff that I keep telling myself. And I'm sober. And because of doing the things that I've done, they've got me to where I'm at today.
That is a beautiful summation. No question about it. Tony, that's an amazing story. And, more importantly, it's such an impactful way of looking at the unbelievable transformation that one can go through so much adversity, which is why I do this podcast. So much adversity, so many challenges. People that are listening to your story go, wow, that may not have happened to me. If that would have happened to me, what would I have done? And would I have gone down the same road? And so many of us have. I've interviewed so many people that have been molested. And, this is the road. The alcohol and the drugs is what they used to numb that out. And then they continue that dysfunction into their marriages. And, it isn't until they find recovery that they're able to really find that solace and that peace, that inner peace that they need, especially when they connect with a higher power. Yeah.
I want to add one thing because I want to give a little bit of context to it. So a little over, 10 years ago, my dad was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. And, here's a guy who'd never admitted he was an alcoholic, never really ever admitted that he did anything. And I now had this, because my life was chaotic and crazy. I blamed everything on that instance of why I was dysfunctional, right? Why everything in my life wasn't working. So I put all the blame onto my father. And so I didn't talk to my dad for several years. And then once he got diagnosed and everything, and I got into sobriety, everything changed for me. I'm like, I don't really care what he did. It happened. It's not happening, right? And I was able to be with my father. I saw him 1 week prior to him passing. My sister was with him pretty much as she could. I was able to forgive my dad. I asked for forgiveness from my dad, and I was able to love him for being who he was. And when my dad passed, I remember receiving a phone call from one of his sisters, and she said something to me that has profoundly made an impact on my life. She said, your dad did the best he could. It wasn't easy for my father, for your dad and for me growing up. I said, what do you mean? She goes, we were adopted, and your dad carried around with him all of his possessions in a small little box. That was everything to him. And he used to get locked up every single day after school, as with her, in a dog kennel in the outside sun.
Oh.
And I said, a lot of things got in context for me when I figured all of this stuff out, right? All we've been trying to do all of our life is survival. And we don't necessarily know right from wrong. And then I figured out his dad molested him. And so it was this pattern. It was this cycle. And that was one of the most impactful things my mother had said to me on our phone call. She says, son, if you can get sober and you can do this, you're going to change the direction of your family. You're going to change the dynamics of how the lineage and the lines in your family go from here on out. So what has sobriety done for me? Well, I've never molested my kids. I've never molested anybody. It's been able to help me help them to grow up without that having to happen to them. And it's given me an ability to be present in my family. And that to me is once again another victory over my past, over the things that had happened to me. So those are the interesting segues that you get when you listen and you tell your story. You're like, I got to tell the most important thing is that I was able to hold my dad and forgive him. That is truly a gift of this program.
Yes. And it's a beautiful story. And it's something that for people that are listening and holding on to that resentment and that anger, when you work that fourth step and, you have to look at your side of the resentment. When you're molested, it's tough to look at your side of that resentment. But the truth of the matter is that you don't know what their life was like. We're all just human beings. Spiritual beings having a human experience, as I've been told or heard. But we're all just human beings doing the best that we can. When I heard that for the first time, it was when the wall started to break down for me with my parents, and I wasn't molested. I didn't have any of those issues growing up. But my mother's a Jehovah's Witness, and it was a very rigid, strict religious household. And so I had a lot of resentment, but that aspect of what was their life like growing up. And, my mother's from Cuba, and she was raised as a child in Cuba right before the embargo. And there was a lot of chaos going on. They had lots of kids. Dad was a gambler. There was so much in their childhood, and to be able to look at that and to be able to look at what your dad was going through and just kind of through a lens go, I know what he went through now, and I know why he did what he did, and I can let that go now. And not everybody can do that.
No, I don't think everybody should, because I think that everybody does it in their own time. That's what I've learned for myself, right? For me to grow, I had to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. Forgiveness. You forgive yourself, and then you forgive everyone around you. It's impactful, man. I mean, your story is very impactful. Thank you so much for sharing it, because there was a lot of really deep personal stuff in there. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you, being open to vulnerability here on the show, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the only way for me to live. If you want to know how to win my heart, be honest with me. So I'll give you this. This is like very helpful for me. And I didn't get this for a long period of time. Most people build relationships on the surface. They're surface-based relationships. It kind of looks good. There's a little bit below that which is if you pour concrete, maybe 6 inches. Just below that, there's some dirt there. But yeah, that's what you need to lay all that cement on, right? That foundation. Everybody thinks that's the good stuff. I want to go down as deep as I possibly can and as fast as I possibly can, because that's where I live in all of my friendships. All of my friendships. If you want to win my heart, be honest. Get deep. Go at my core. Let's do life together. Because if you take all the other crap away, we're just human beings, right? I get asked this all the time. Tony, are you a human doer or a human being right now? I'm usually a human doer trying to be. And when I get to the core of it at the fastest possible, I dig there deep, I have transparency. And that's where real life happens for me. All of my friends, you could phone a friend right now if we were on the show, and I'd be like, you could ask the question, what's Tony like today? Tony is transparent. Tony is free. Tony is living. He is alive. That wasn't me.
Absolutely.
And so the gift for me is go to the core as fast as you can, because if you can change and transform the core, you can plant new seeds, a new garden. You can rebuild things that shouldn't be rebuilt. You can build a multi-million-dollar company. You know, I've gone on to build this company with my 2 childhood best friends well into, I think we're approaching $100 million in our business lifetime.
Wow.
And at one time we were saying, I don't know if this thing's going to work or not. Right. And so you can do anything if you can get to the core fast of the problem, then you can bring a solution. Stop talking about the problem. Let's go find a solution. My solution was getting sober, getting clean, getting honest. My life changed.
So I'm curious now, as you know, I want to segue a little bit here. I'd like to know a little bit more about, you know, your current business, the one that you've mentioned a few times that you had with your childhood friends, and also about the podcast. What inspired you to launch the podcast, and tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the company that I run is called Ship Offers. We are in year 16. We are a logistics and products company in the health and wellness space. We provide marketers an opportunity not to buy inventory up front, to use our 60 products on demand, have access to basically our fulfillment services, and pay us after the fact. We ship roughly 40,000 shipments each and every week. We're an Inc. 5000 company the last 3 years in a row. We are anticipating some new numbers coming out in August. Hopefully we'll break into the top 500. We have about 36 employees. We come here every single day to affect change into the world. It's not about what I sell. It's about what we do, which is to help somebody today to be better than they were yesterday. I love that I get to, come here, go to work, make money, go home and see my family. But there was something missing. There was something missing inside me from when I left radio. And I didn't know what it was. I'd heard about podcasting. I'd heard about people just opening a mic, hitting record, and uploading episodes to this thing called the intranet or the cloud. And I was like, what is it? And I started listening to episodes. And then in 2012, my buddy Mike Murphy said, hey, how would you like to be on my podcast? I'm like, sure. What do I do? Where do I go? And he goes, no, just, you can use Skype. You can just use your phone. I'll record it. I'm like, all right, cool. And he interviewed me, and I was like, that was really cool. Took me 3 years to finally come up with the idea that I was like, you know what? Why don't I take what I love, which is talking to people, mix it with business and life, and launch a podcast? And I just put purpose behind my passion. I went home on a Friday night, and by Monday morning had 3 episodes in the can with some friends. And I launched my podcast after thinking about it for a long period of time. One of my friends online, Dan Meredith, said, he posted something. He goes, just do it. Just do that one thing that you've been thinking about doing for so long. And I got into action again. And I launched my podcast, and I haven't looked back. I'm approaching almost 100 episodes of like the real numbers, 1, 2, 3, all the way. And my guest on my 100th show, if she still says yes, is going to be my wife. Just to kind of just talk about life and how we've been able to kind of repair it and help people to understand that there's hope in everybody's story. And I'm just going to keep sharing hope, because that's the one thing that I heard when I first walked into the rooms. And that's what I try to do every single day, is help people to see that there is a way out today. You just have to take personal action for your, whatever you did, and stop, messing around and get serious, and you can help change lives. And so I wake up every single day with contribution on my heart. And if I can help affect change in one person, I did a good job. And I feel like God was able to give me another opportunity to be of service and carry the message. And that's what I do. My podcast, my work, my marriage, and my friendships.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it, man. Very inspirational and an amazing radio voice.
Thank you, O. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for a show, it's O. Yeah.
I love it, man.
Love it.
You know what? Tony, I need you to do my next intro. This is an honor.
I'm happy. I used to get paid big bucks for it too. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's part of the whole deal. You know what I mean? Back when the voiceover business was, well, it's huge now. You know what I mean? Trying to get into that is almost like trying to become an actor. But yeah, that's big business.
No, I actually have my logo tattooed on my arm. My business partner today drew my logo 20 years ago it used to be Big G Productions. And so I have this logo tattooed of a DJ, mixing a record and using like a mixer. And today it's just a giant mouse and a keyboard. So I've just been able to transition from what it was to what it is today for me. Right.
That's it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Technology makes things more accessible. That's for sure. All right. So, Tony, let's start wrapping up. And the way that I like to wrap up is, well, actually, first, before we wrap up, tell us the best way for our listeners to find you, to reach out to you, your podcast website, all of it. Sure.
So I'll give you two pieces of information, and if they work for you, great. You can always find me on Facebook. So Facebook / Tony Grebmeier, you'll find me and send me a message. Happy to help you. Happy to share anything that I can with you. My podcast is TonyGShow.com. My company is ShipOffers.com. And, just reach out. I'm on all the social media platforms. Happy to help in any way I can.
Beautiful. I'm going to have all that listed on the show notes, folks. So just go to the Share Podcast show notes for Tony, and I'll have those links listed on those show notes. All right. So now we're going to close up, and I like to close up for the newcomer. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and I want you to answer with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right, let's do this. So number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
Nothing was stopping me. Once I understood what recovery was, which was getting honest for myself, I've never looked back, and I've been able to stay sober since the first day I walked into the rooms.
Beautiful, beautiful. Number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
Literally my first week into the rooms. I tell people all the time, it was amazing. I was going to a meeting and I heard another person share a story. And right after that, I had this like spiritual awakening, and I saw myself actually outside of my body. Like I literally felt like, you know what? We can do this. And it wasn't me, it was we. Like I saw what it said on the wall, and I go, we can do this. We can transform. We can recover. We can move on. And what I did is over. But what I need to do is get into action. And I remember it was like my one weekend. I had that spiritual awakening moment.
There's nothing better than that pink cloud, that early recovery pink cloud. I remember being on it, and a few of the members, some of them that were struggling and they'd been there a while, they had been relapsing, and they said, man, you're on a pink cloud right now. Ride that thing as long as you can, brother. And I was like, I wonder what that means. I understood later, but it is amazing. It'll carry you for a while.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely it does.
All right. Number 3, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to our newcomers that you read in early recovery?
Yeah. I mean, the big book for me was huge. I still have my favorite page 420, not because it's the marijuana page. But it's the page down at the bottom that really shows me the opportunity to change things today. I replaced Max with my wife or anybody, and that was very helpful for me. So first paragraph on 420 to the bottom of the big book has always been my go-to.
Beautiful, beautiful. And number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
In recovery, it's simple. Get a commitment. As fast as you possibly can. Get a commitment. I don't care if it's, for me, it was emptying cigarette butts, if it was making coffee, if it was getting cakes, if it was setting up, it was staying late, whatever. Get a commitment so that you stay committed to your program.
Beautiful, beautiful. And number 5, if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
Don't use anything today that would change the way how you feel. Express it with another human being, call your sponsor, attend a meeting. So if I could give a newcomer only one suggestion, it's all of that and a bag of chips. Don't use today.
I love it. Wow. Tony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Oh, it's an absolute honor. I hope I served your community well. I hope it was helpful, because I know every time I share my story, right, I learn a little bit more about me, and I realize, you know what, man, we've come a long ways, and I couldn't do it without you. I couldn't do it without your audience. I couldn't do it without my family. I couldn't do it without my higher power. And for me, as I got ready to go today, I said this, and I think this is really important. As I got ready to share my story, I said, God, may the words be yours and the experience be mine.
Oh, man, I am stealing that. I love it. May the words be yours and the experience be mine.
And I have to give that to my good buddy Brad, because that's his deal, and I steal it all the time.
Okay, good. Like I like to say, nothing's original. I regurgitate to the best of my ability.
No, I love it. It's totally true. You know, and what's so great, I got to tell you, I don't expect a lot today when I get ready to get onto a show. I just kind of love to just be. I got to tell you, man, your show rocks. It was cool just to kind of go through the transitions. And, you know, I'm always being the person to interview. And so it's cool to sit back and be interviewed on other shows. And you did an amazing job. So thank you very much for giving me a platform to share my story today.
Well, thank you, brother. You shared beautifully and eloquently. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you.
Thanks, bud.
All right. So we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida. Give us a pura vida.
Pura vida.
One more time.
Pura vida?
Pura vida.
How do you say that again? Can you slow it down and stretch it?
Sure. Pura vida.
Yeah, that's a lot for me. Can I just say, make today the best day of your life?
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview, or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship.